Hey everybody, it's me. I mentioned that I didn't like exercising. And um so it's funny because I remember, you have all these memories from school. I don't care if it's because you were overweight or what it was. We all have them. And I remember some of the heaviest people coming and reflecting their stuff on me, you know. I'm sure they got made fun of, but they were guys. So I don't know if it's really as different as I think it is, but, uh, and, you know, they would come at me with all different things. So yeah, when I was a teenager, I didn't want to go to the gym. And even as an adult, I don't want to go to the gym. I know in my mind that everybody is there for themselves for different reasons, stress, cholesterol, different things, right? Health. Um, but, and I'm sure you've heard a lot of people say this, but to walk in there and you are probably the heaviest person there is not comfortable. Um, it gives you almost feel like a little kid again who's shy, and you feel like everybody, like in movies, that everybody's stopping and they're just staring and gawking at you. I know that's not really how it is, but that's how I see it in my head. And I've talked to other people who are like that, who feel the same kind of way without me telling them like, "Hey, here's how I feel." They come to me and they're like, "Yeah, that's I don't go to gyms because of this reason." And that's I know I hate to say it's sad because I'm one of them. Um, but I am. Sorry, just got done eating steak. And then I'm getting ready to eat my salad, which I didn't have much to put in my poor salad today. I got a lot of like vegetables and stuff like that, or canned vegetable, but not a lot for my salad. And yes, that's turkey pepperoni. Anyway, um, so yeah, so that's one reason I don't like to go to the gym. And again, I know in my head that's not really how it works, but that's how it feels. Okay. Um, then you know, I had a lot of, and I know my parents did their best with me growing up. Don't get me wrong. I think I mentioned I lived with my dad for a year when I was little. And we had this local park that people went and walked around. And there was a pool, and I was always at the pool. If I wasn't home, I was usually at the pool or at my cousin's house. But I love swimming. Love, love, love. Still love it to this day. Um, Anyways, so yeah. So we had this local park, and we would go walking there sometimes. But one day, we went to the park, and we're walking, and I'm 6 years old. I'm not walking as fast as my dad, and he disappears. He goes ahead of me, and he disappears, and I can't see him anywhere. And you can imagine at 6 years old how much that's going to scare a 6 year old. You're left alone in a park. You don't know anyone. You can't see your parent. So I just finally stopped walking. He was mad at me because I wouldn't walk faster. First of all, I'm 5 feet tall right now. I was never as tall as him. My legs aren't as long as most people's, right? So yeah, um, he disappeared, and I stopped where I was, and I started screaming bloody murder and crying because I couldn't see my dad. And that was the only logical thing that I could think of at that age. And so people did stop and ask me, and I was just so upset, as you can imagine. Finally, he did come back, and I think we left the park. After that day, um, living with him, I'm not sure we went back to the park for a lot of years or any that time. Um, we, yeah, I even had a birthday at the same park, but up by the playground. And I was in gymnastics. I was always an active kid. Um, but 6 years old is when I moved in with him. And I think he came from a big family, and they were probably not, obviously they were not rich. And so he would feed me, when I lived with him, portions that were for probably two grown men, and you were not allowed to leave the table until you finished it. And you can imagine how that went for me. Um, so 6 is when I started putting on my weight. And I think he thought he was doing something good for me, making me exercise, I was in gymnastics. I was always outdoors playing. Back in my day, we were always outside. We hated coming in, right? We were playing games, we were running, we were riding bikes, we were doing all that fun stuff. So I was an active kid. The weight just kept going on. So then, uh, yeah, so we had a birthday party. So when I turned 7, it was at that same park, but it was up near the playground. And so I had left gymnastics, and I remember riding with him. And I finally got the nerves to ask him where we were going because I could see it was towards the park. And my anxiety, I'm not kidding, went through the roof because I just knew he was going to make me walk again. And my anxiety went through the roof. Well, it turned out he's like, we're going to walk from, I'm like, we just passed the park. He's like, we're going to walk from the playground all the way down. And oh my gosh, you can imagine my anxiety then. Anyway, so it ended up, then we went up to the playground. And then I started noticing, there's my grandma, there's my uncle. It ended up, it was my 7th birthday party, thankfully. Uh, mm-hmm. And thankfully it was at the playground. And I didn't have to go walking, that day. I'm not sure he and I ever went back to that park after that. We used to walk it a lot, and he would stay with me. But that last time, and you can see, I have so much trouble with all of it. So then we go to my mom. And obviously, my mom cared about me and does care about me. And she was very worried about me when she saw how much weight I had gained. Obviously, at that time. And so, when I moved back with my mom, I was 7, and I lived with her the rest of my time. And so, obviously she was just, wow, this what happened to my little girl, right? I mean, let's be real. When she sent me to my dad, I was fine. When I came home, I had gained a lot of weight. And again, I was very active. Um, I was, always outside, catching lightning bugs, running here, riding bikes here, um, gymnastics, swim, all of it. So yeah. So when she got me back, obviously she was worried about me. You can imagine. And around the same time, so I think around 8 years old, I started puberty. I had already started puberty at like 6. I already had a chest, you know. But then other things started happening, obviously, for me at 8. So we go to the doctor, and it's mind-blowing, but there's nothing they're going to do. And, yeah, so at that same time, I'm in school. I'm in the after-school program. We lived in a very sunny state. And so I was always active there too. I was always on the playground. I was always running, playing, you know. And I just kept putting the weight on. No matter what we did, no matter what she tried to do, it just kept coming on. My mom was not the best cook, but she did not cook unhealthy food, at all. So, yeah, so it just kept going and going. Jumps and go to, I'm 12, 13. I'm, I don't know how much I weighed. I mean, at that time. But I've always been bigger than, the other students. There might be a few plus size girls at school, right? And, we lived with different people throughout my life. And, sorry, something's in my mouth. That's irritating me. Anyway, so we moved around a lot. I moved around a lot my whole life. But yeah, so, again, I was always outdoors, no matter where I lived. But then you get to, 12, 13. You're not outdoors as much, obviously. You're not playing at the playgrounds, really. You're not, as active as when you were a little kid. So then you can imagine, 10, 11, even the weight just kept piling on and on and on. And then at that point, my mom, she was so frustrated. And I understand her frustration because I have the same kid in my house. And now I get it. She was so frustrated with my weight. She would try to get me outside, ride bikes, do things. And I did, but not like when I was a little kid, right? And then I was more independent. So I'm at my friend's house, and of course they have yummy snacks. And things, just, going out, doing things, being a preteen. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna tell you guys a secret. I think I've said this before, if I don't start eating something sweet, then I'm fine. But if I take a bite of it, and my brain goes like a pinball machine, and I have to have more. All I can think about, all I want is that. So when we were in elementary school, I believe it is. If you went to school with me, let me know. I think it was elementary school that we had to sell the candy bars. I'm not gonna lie. I ate most of them. I had a neighbor who came over and would buy some off me, but I ate them. And I ended up paying for them, but I ate them. And, things like that. Even now, a lot of things, if I start, that's why I don't keep a lot of that in my house. I wouldn't be able to stop. Now there are certain things that, I'm fine with. It's just really weird. Like the other day at the grocery store, I ordered a piece of cake. You can get like one piece of cake. I don't know if you guys have seen that. And I was fine eating that one piece. But there are times that no. My mom was the same way. I think a lot of people really are. My mom was the same way, but she was thinner. She got better genes, right? So yeah. So yeah, the weight just kept going on and on, as you guys can imagine. My mom got so frustrated, and I didn't get the belt with my mom. I didn't get, different things. My mom was the yardstick lady, which was kind of funny because even if she would have spanked me, and she did once with the yardstick, yeah, it broke. Anyways, not because she hit me so hard, just because it's not, yeah. Anyway, so she used to tell me to go outside and walk. Go outside and walk. Why don't you go outside and walk? If you don't get out there, I'm going to get my yardstick and follow you. Even though she never really did. It, again, was anxiety for me. She wasn't trying to be mean. She was frustrated. And I understand this. I absolutely get it now. So then let's jump to when I was 13. I got this boyfriend. And he loved my size. He loved me. And I don't know if he was one that he wanted me to get bigger. He never said that. But he didn't have a problem with me eating or getting bigger. How about that? And so he would, and I mean, granted, yeah, sometimes I would, like that time of month, I'm craving chocolate, right? Um, we know this. We know women seem to crave chocolate that time of month, most of us. And so if I was craving it, he would go buy it. Except where, again, I wouldn't just have one. And then, then he was working at fast food restaurants too. And so he'd bring leftovers home. And again, I wouldn't stay out of those. He'd bring chocolate cake home. He would bring, I think at one point he worked at like KFC. And so he'd bring buckets of chicken and buckets of like biscuits, things like that. And where I lived at that time, you could just walk, and you were in this big shopping complex. So you had different stores with different treats. There were restaurants, and so then I got to the point that I craved sweets sometimes. Um, you know, And my mom was a pizza hog, but again, she was never as big as me or as heavy as me, however you want to say it. So we I would tell my mom I'm going for a walk, and I would go to the store and buy all these sweets. And they were actually, it was funny, they were actually diabetic, like cookies and candy. I'm not sure what that really entitled, but I would, or sometimes I would get Reese's or, stuff like that. And I would come home and I would hide them. And I would eat them pretty much in one day. Because again, I would take a bite and I would crave it. And that's all I could think about. I would hide and eat this stuff. And then I couldn't throw it in the trash because she would see it. So I would put it behind my couch in the living room or under my bed, wherever, I was eating it. And so yeah, that got really bad, I will say. And then my boyfriend at the time and I would go to the local restaurant and eat whatever we felt like eating. And so this went on for quite a long time. And of course, by this time, I'm not outside playing. I'm not outside really walking unless it's to the store. And I got to the point in my life, I'm still in high school. If they're talking about my weight at that point, I don't hear about it and I don't want to hear about it, right? So I got to the point that I actually had gotten school clothes that year, and it got to the point that I couldn't fit them. And I was wearing pajamas to school was allowed then, and it became popular then. And so I was wearing these, they look like I Dream of Jeannie pants that were green. And I pretty much wore those almost every day. I didn't want to look at my mom and say, hey, by the way, I even got fatter. Because of how disappointed she would be of me. My boyfriend at the time loved me regardless of what I looked like or how heavy I got. I was going at the same time. There was a lot of things going on in my life with him that nobody knew except for my best friend. On the outside, people thought he was amazing and that I had him wrapped around my little finger, which I did in some ways. But there was a deep, dark secret that I was holding in, and I was drowning inside. And I didn't know how to get away from it. It was something that I thought if I continued to put up with and go through, then nobody else would have to go through it. That's all I'm going to tell you about that. My getaway was going to school. I couldn't wait to go to school. I loved going to school because it gave me a way to get away from him. So I was going through a lot then, too. I'm at that point, I'm 16, 17, 18, So so my mom did find all the wrappers and boxes finally. And she, as you can imagine, she just cried and just was hurt and upset for me that I would do that to myself, because I didn't understand. I mean, I did, but I guess, when I'm 16, I'm going, oh, I can work out. I have like 2 years before, you know, it gets harder to lose weight. Or I have, this many years. I'll do it next year. That was the problem. You know, and that's obviously that's not how it works. And so it was embarrassing to myself. Um, not like I didn't care what the other kids at school or anything said, but I was embarrassed. I couldn't even fit my clothes that I just bought a few months earlier. You know. So, yeah, so finally, after years of all of it, and my ex, my boyfriend, and I finally broke up at 18, maybe 17, 18, I don't remember. So at that point, I kind of went wild. I went numb. And again, I started drinking. We started, of course, with drinking comes eating, as you guys could probably remember. So that wasn't good. I would go to McDonald's, I would get pizza and take to our get-togethers, like my friend groups, like all this stuff. And it was just not working for me at all. Like, and then my ex and I did join a gym. That didn't go well for us because, one, I'm going to tell you guys the truth. One, we didn't exercise. We usually ended up fighting at the gym. And if we weren't fighting, let's just say we were in the hot tub and people started, I guess, reporting us, not because I don't think we were doing anything inappropriate, but like I would be sitting there at the top of it and he would have his hand on my upper thigh. And that's all, on my leg, nothing. But a lot of the older people didn't think that was appropriate. So we would be in the hot tub and we would wait until everybody was out of the room and then, have some fun in the hot tub. I'm not gonna lie then, but as long as it was empty, right? So then we would get dressed and say we were done exercising for the day. That was not meaning that was exercise, just we never actually worked out. I saw a few people that there in the exercise room that I knew. My boyfriend and I would end up fighting. It was just, nothing came of it. I remember when I was little, and I was probably about 6, and even then I, gaining weight. My dad was probably 400 pounds possibly, and he had a girlfriend. And we pulled in one day, and maybe he was frustrated. But he looked at me and he said, "What are you going to wear for clothes soon? Sheets?" Because I was gaining so much weight. So I have, my dad leaving me, my mom threatening me with a yardstick. And you can see why I don't like working out. Now there was a time, and this is going to be a longer video. here. So there was a time that I actually did join Jenny Craig. You know, in high school, that's what everybody would say to people, join Jenny Craig, right? Well, since I've been older, I did join Jenny Craig, and I loved it. Loved my counselor. She was the best. I ended up actually, because she ended up leaving the company, I couldn't have another counselor. So I left the company. She was my cheerleader. She was awesome. Like, there was no one like her. So I did do Jenny Craig, and I lost quite an amount of weight at that time. I love it, except for the only bad thing is they don't really teach you how to eat. You have, I mean, they have their meals prepared. So, you know, you either stay on it forever or you go off of it, and of course you're going to gain the weight back. And I didn't like that, but that's not why I quit. It's expensive, first of all. So I did do that, and I did lose a lot of weight. Then I was working out all the time. If I even had and I mean a slice of cake, because when I get the mindset, I can have willpower, but I have to be in a certain mindset. And believe me, it's very hard to get there. You know, so I lived in an apartment with my family at that point. And the great thing about this apartment is they had a workout room right below where we lived. They had an indoor pool and an outdoor pool and a hot tub, or a sauna, sorry. Let me tell you, I worked out all the time. If I had a slice of cake, I had to go work out a second time for that day. So I got obsessed with working out, and I did a lot of cardio. And I lost a lot of weight, and it was amazing. You know, I'm really hard on myself because if I lose 6 pounds, why didn't I lose 7? So I am my own worst enemy, like everybody is. So yeah, it was amazing. At that time, again, anything that seems to bring me joy or takes away from what my husband seems to think that his wife should be doing, he runs and then feels like I'm ignoring him because, you know, help us all if I was taking care of myself, right? And so things got rough. As you can imagine, then I had a toddler. At that point, my grandma was living with us, so I was helping take care of her, who had dementia also. My mom was working, and things were just, you know, it was hard. I didn't have time for myself. You know, my husband runs to the internet when I was trying to take care of myself and make myself better for us, for our family. So it went out the door. So then, as you can imagine, the weight came back on. And probably even more then, right? So then, years later, I got to the point that I really wasn't doing anything to do. I tried Weight Watchers. That did nothing for me. I've tried Weight Watchers more than once. And it really doesn't do anything for me. And it'd be nice if someone could tell me what I'm doing wrong there. But it does nothing for me. So then, you know, have my second kid and just life again. And the weight just goes on. I went to see about weight loss surgery. And at that point, they were willing to do it, but they wanted to do the big surgery. And I had two little kids. And I wasn't going to be able to pick up my kids for how long? I couldn't do it. Plus, my mom, I love her, but she was not the best nurse usually for me. How about that? Maybe for people when she was actual nurse, but she would want me to get up and take care of my kids, and why couldn't I do this, and why couldn't I do, she had a life to live. And so I'm going to take a bite of my salad, guys. Whoops. Drop some. Yeah, so, now she did take good care of me after my heart surgery, I will say. Because of not being able to pick up my kids and how I know my mom would have been if I would have had the surgery. I opted not to have it. Plus, I didn't want the big one. I was hoping for like the sleeve or something like that. But of course, they wanted to get as much weight off as they could. And the most weight I was going to lose was with the big surgery. And I didn't want that one. So at that point, I was the heaviest that I had ever been. And no, I'm not going to tell you what that number was. But I was. And that scared the shit out of me. Because I go back and forth. I try and I try. And then I let it. Then I let it go. And then I let myself gain even more. And I say the hell with it. But that time, it scared me. So, I don't know. So, if you guys have ever seen the TV show, Extreme Weight Loss. And it's Heidi and Chris Powell when they were married. And I watched that show and I loved it. I guess it's kind of like a Biggest Loser. But just with like one person at a time. Anyways. So I love that show. And I love them. They look like Barbie and Ken. Hello. But I felt like they were real. Like connected to them. They had this beautiful family, Anyway, so I kind of got obsessed with them and what they did. And found they had a few books out there. And one was about carb cycling. And so I looked into it and I'm like, hey, I could do this. This would be pretty easy for me. And again, I was in that mindset. The mindset of, let's do this. I can do this. Well, I started. Sometimes I felt like I was starving to death at first. And I really didn't feel that way. Definitely cut down on a lot of things, but I didn't feel always hungry. When it was time to eat, I was ready. Let's put it that way, though. So, so I started carb cycling, and I only like their version. There's a lot of different versions out there, but I like theirs. Especially if you read the book, because it's really simple. And that's what I like, simple, right? So I started that, and then I started losing weight pretty fast, and I think less than 6 months I lost about almost 90 pounds. And that was awesome. I got a treadmill. I had bought a treadmill, and I had weights and I had everything else already. And I really went at it. I started walking around the neighborhood, things like that. Lost, like I said, close to 90 pounds. I was walking the mall with my friend at the time. And then something bad happened. And it's another thing. Sorry, I'm not going to tell you. These are things that I'm, not ready to share. How about that? But something bad happened in my life. And out went the window to the carb cycling and taking care of myself. And then the weight came back on. Let's just say that it was really rough. It interrupted my family, my friendship. A lot of bad things happened. So the weight came back on. And, ever since then, which this is probably about 10 years ago now, I have really tried on and off different plans, different exercise things. So my treadmill, I did have a treadmill and elliptical. And when my mom had her stroke, I had to make room for her bed because she was not going to be going up and down the steps or anything. So I gave her the family room as her room, and that's where the treadmill and elliptical was. So I got rid of it to make room for her bed and her room. I got rid of both of them. It was heartbreaking. But obviously I'm going to pick my mom over the machine. I had nowhere else to put them at all in my house. But so I am trying to push through. I'm always trying. I don't want to be skinny. I'm definitely fine with not being skinny. Healthier, yes, I would love that. Somewhat thinner, yes. But there's a lot of things that I love about myself, like I've said before. And so, I'm not one that I'm trying to be a size 2, or even close to that. am in reality. But, you know, it would be nice to definitely be thinner, than I am. Or however you say that. I'm not sure if I worded that right, but you guys get the picture. Anyway, so that is my story of why I don't like working out. I hate working out. I have been using right now I think it's called the kettlebell. And so I've been using that. My weights are somewhere around my house. It's just where. But yeah, and then of course every summer, if you know me, I'm always out walking. I walk and walk and walk, especially if you have seen my videos of like the Sandhill Cranes or me walking in different parks. It will be different this year. I'm not sure how that's gonna work because my mom and I were the ones that would go looking for the Sandhill Cranes. We are the ones that were always walking in the parks. So we will see how that goes this year because she will not be doing that with me. But I am hoping to get where I need to. I know when she first had her stroke and I was trying to take care of her. I did lose some weight. I'm sure it's back on now. Um, because of all the stress. I just wasn't eating much. Anyways, so yeah, so that is why I don't like exercising. That's why I don't like walking. And I know people are going to be like, dude, you were like 6. You were like, but it's still, it's like, if someone hurts you, you forgive, but you don't forget, and that's one of my traumas, I guess, in my life. So I'm trying to definitely work through it. I mean, I am out there walking more. With winter, obviously, it's not as easy. That's why I don't go to a gym. Um, I just cannot bring myself to go to a gym. I think when I first moved with my husband, we joined the YMCA. The one that we joined isn't even around anymore. And that wasn't too bad, actually. Of course, it was a little thinner when I moved up here. Maybe a lot more thinner, but you know what I mean. Anyways, so I remember my father-in-law, like he and I are really good friends, and he said to me one day, he said, when you moved here, your stomach was tight. Like, first of all, I've had 2 kids since I moved here. But thank you. I can't help that. I was younger too, right? Anyways, so that is my story of me, I guess, gaining weight and why I don't like exercising. So, if you have any questions, feel free to. Oh, one of the exercises that I love, actually, is boxing. I have one in the garage. I haven't been able to use it because people were parking in the garage and I can't actually get to it. So I do love that. It definitely very difficult. So actually, at our last house, I had the elliptical. It was in the garage, along with the boxing punching bag, and I used to go out there and take my CD player because we had one still then, and I would go out there and work out. So, and then we also had a basketball hoop. I love to play. I don't know if I like to play basketball, but I love to shoot hoops, and my kids and I used to play sometimes, so that was fun. So yeah. Of course, being a mom, when you have little kids, you're always outside. Um, you know, they're riding bikes, or you're teaching them how to throw a football, or playing hide and go seek or something. So I did a lot of that, obviously, but nothing that really moved the weight is the problem. Definitely know that a lot of mine is snacking. I snack through. I snack a lot. Like, I won't always eat meals. I mean, when I say I snack a lot, like, I don't have a lot of, like, I don't have granola bars. I mean, for the kids. So I don't snack on that stuff. I'm not sure what I really. Sometimes I'll go eat chips, and I don't even like chips. But they're there and they're fast. So I think a lot of mine is eating, ordering in, which is what Jenny and Craig told me when I joined. They were like, looks like a lot of yours is like you ordering food, because my husband and I used to order all the time when our kids were little, or I was pregnant with our second one. I'd be too tired to cook and trying to take care of my oldest at that point, and we would order in all the time. And I've been trying to cook more at home, but I won't lie, I kind of slipped and started ordering, in a lot more again, and that's not good. So it's good that I'm trying to make dinner again. um so wish me luck.